At the University of Toledo, we are surrounded by experts. And we tap into those experts here on Rocket Talk.
I'm Ben Myers, and this is Rocket Talk. Toughness is traditionally something that we valued in our athletes. We ask our athletes, and celebrities in general, to rise to the challenge, not only physically, but mentally as well. But recently, we've seen a wave of athletes speaking out about the pressures of being asked to perform at the highest level. Tennis star Naomi Osaka bowed out of Wimbledon and the French Open, citing concerns about her anxiety with media interviews. Simone Biles withdrew from all individual events in the last Olympics, citing her mental health. Many other athletes are similarly opening up about the difficulty of managing their careers while also trying to maintain their mental health. To talk about the phenomenon today, we have with us Associate Professor of Program and Program Director of Counselor Education, Madeline Clark, and Assistant Professor of Communication, Gigi McNamara, who studies celebrity culture. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with a bird's eye question and just put in context kind of what we're talking about today. But can you talk a little bit about what the main drivers of mental health pressures are for celebrities in general and maybe athletes in particular?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. I think we're really at an important confluence of events here, socially and politically. COVID, I think about Simone Biles and the Larry Nassar trial, racial justice movements, and just increased, I think, scrutiny on athletes via social media adds a level of pressure. There's certainly a whole host of things about athletes we don't see in their personal lives that aren't on social media, which is additive to this. And I would even add that some of the language we use to talk about athletes, like our athletes, even in the introduction, communicates a message that, you know, we maybe have ownership over their activity and who they are as people.
And I think in addition to that, as you mentioned, social media, I think it's so important to think about how social media makes us feel as if we know these celebrities and these athletes. And then when you think about the days and the weeks leading up to the Olympics, when you think about the attention that Simone Biles endured from the media in general, talking about all the records that she was expected to break and all of was she the best of all time? And I think that was an enormous amount of pressure leading up to that. And then you combine that with social media and all of the comments that they have to endure. It's a level of scrutiny that I think needs to be really examined at a significant level.
Oh, that makes sense. I think it's interesting that we talk about social media and feeling like we know our athletes. But to some degree, we probably do know our athletes. I did it again. Celebrities and athletes who we connect with. We do probably know them better than we used to. Mm-hmm. Do you think that adds pressure to them as well, feeling the need to be more open to people?
I think when I think about Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka specifically, I think there's a lot of additional pressure via social media, not only because of their age, they're young women, they're really young, but also what their experiences are as Black women or biracial women, or that added pressure of racism and the comments they might receive. So I think that goes into it. And of course there's this kind of influencer culture where everyone's expected to be like on at all times, and if you're not, you feel like maybe there's something wrong with you. And I think that is probably additive to that.
And you think about social media being this performative space in a certain degree, and it also works, quite well for being this space for positive self-disclosure, a place of community, a place where women can share their stories and other women can feel a place of community. But then again, there is that hyper-performative quality that people are expected to always put their best face forward on Instagram and on Facebook. And if something happens and it's not the most flattering photo or not the most flattering posting, then you can see the absolute dark side of social media at the same time.
Well, a lot of the dialogue around this has centered around some commentators saying this is yet another example of, quote, snowflake culture. And I'm curious how you would respond to those critics.
I think it is really shocking to me that people believe that they're entitled to anything from anyone's time. Athletes are human beings with whole lives, and they know their bodies best and they know their performance best, and should be encouraged to set those boundaries. I think that's really important to not only model for other athletes, but other people who have mental health issues too.
And if you look at the coverage of Simone Biles in particular, there was a definite cycle to the coverage. When she initially announced that she was taking a break from the Olympics, there was shock. how is this happening? We were so looking forward to these events. Then it moved to concern for her physical health, her mental health, and then it moved to judgment. How is this happening? Is she just overreacting? Is she panicking? It's not fair to the athletes who could have gone in her place. And then we cycled through to the very end with I think, a newfound understanding and appreciation of mental health concerns and the pressure that she was under. So, and that all happened in a span of just a few weeks. You can really track the media coverage and see the definite kind of markers along that kind of journey to her, kind of assessment of her place as a sports heroine.
Sure. And when you talk about that pressure, I also think of, maybe not as much with Naomi, but with Simone. She's doing a dangerous thing while she's up there. And if your head's not right, you're not feeling like you're able to handle the pressure, that's, that is a position you probably shouldn't want to put yourself in.
And Maddie, I think you said it perfectly when you said this idea of entitlement. We don't know these athletes. We don't own these athletes.
Right.
She's every right to pull out of any event she wants to for any reason. Right. She doesn't owe the spectator or the fan or the American fan anything. Yeah.
So why is this happening right now? We've enjoyed athletics in our societies for a long time. Why are we now focusing on mental health?
I think a lot of that has come from social media. I would really, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are really communicative online about their mental health issues in a way that we haven't seen before, which I think is cool. And there's a lot of upsides and maybe some downsides to that in some ways. So I think it has allowed people to communicate more robustly about these issues. And I also think it is a confluence of socio-political events. Like I said, COVID has been really challenging, I think, for everyone's mental health. We talk about the fight for racial justice and the impact that has on BIPOC folks and the impact of the Me Too movement. And I just think this has created a dialogue in our culture that just is kind of at a catalyst moment, perhaps.
Yes, and certainly during the pandemic, we obviously turned to social media in ways we'd never before. And I've got some statistics from a recent Pew survey. These statistics are just a few months old from when they surveyed all Americans. In this particular survey, it was all the way from aged 18 all the way up to 65. They surveyed that roughly 81% of them were using YouTube, 69% of them were using Facebook, and roughly 7 out of 10 were viewing Facebook at least once a day. When you looked at younger social media users, 71% using Instagram, 65% on Snapchat, and about 50% on TikTok. So this certainly underscores the fact that we are living our lives online. We use different platforms depending on our age and demographic profile, but this again just reinforces how important these platforms are to us.
Yeah, for sure. So how should this conversation and the fact that it's happening right now change the way that we watch sports or engage with celebrities in general? Are there things that we can do that allow us to still enjoy those things while being more ethical? And can we still ethically root for these athletes? And especially with social media, how about engaging them on social media?
I think those are probably two separate questions. I think when we talk about ethics in sports, there's always been debates about ethics in sports. We can talk about CTE and the NFL and the challenges with that, or Colin Kaepernick and how the NFL treated him. And now we see USA Gymnastics and Larry Nassar, Simone Biles, all these other things. This also brings up Britney Spears and a conversation about mental health and celebrities, although not an athlete. So I think we do have to be critical about how the media is treating folks. I think we can see maybe an article posted, we can talk about like a Facebook algorithm and all the news that's been out recently about how that kind of encourages kind of outragey type sharing of information online and how that can contribute to it. So I think we all just really need to be critical consumers of this information. And I also think we should be humanistic about this too, is have some empathy and compassion for people who are in really high pressure and have worked really, really hard to get there. None of the choices I think athletes make are easy.
I agree, and I think every time we have these conversations, I think we move towards some sort of change and resolution. The Britney Spears example that you brought up, that's been in the news for years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken so long for that situation to work itself out, and I think in the coming days, weeks, as she speaks about everything that she's endured, I think every conversation is another conversation towards accepting, destigmatizing mental health and getting help for these particular issues, depression, anxiety.
As we're winding down, we have about 1 minute left here, but I think we should take a step back and talk about what this conversation means for not only celebrities and athletes, but what does it mean for all of us? What can we learn from it? And might this be a tipping point in our conversation about mental health?
I hope it really is. I think I see a lot of clients, even students here on campus, who have really bought into this like grind culture idea of I have to work myself so hard to be successful. And if we all could take a step back, and if we needed to be well or take a break, that we create environments where that's acceptable for physical health, for mental health, etc.
Yes, and I echo that. I think, again, every conversation is a move towards acceptance. And again, even though we feel like we're connected on our devices, we can't discount the importance of interpersonal communication, right? The actual human connection in our increasingly, we hope, post-pandemic world.
Well, and I think these kind of conversations that we're having right now are, part of that train to hopefully changing some of that conversation. So, and I want to thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you, Madeline and Gigi. And that's all the time that we have for today. Tune in next week for more Rocket Talk.